really about the reach, because everything I do is to see how I can reach more parents of children with autism, to share the resources and the how-to that took me over a decade to figure out after I was told that my son would not recover and that I should drug him and try behavioral therapies and good luck, that would be it. And I just didn't want to do that. I mean, my background as a craniosacral therapy and holistic health let me know that the brain could heal. It's a scientific fact. But when my son was diagnosed, I really didn't know much about autism. And it took me a long time to figure it out, but it was worth every second. It was worth every penny, because today my son is fully recovered. And if I had just listened to the naysayers and the so-called professionals and experts that told me that he couldn't get any better, then my son today would not be graduating college in 2 months, living away on his own in a very independent, healthy, happy, and fulfilling life. He's no longer even diagnosable. And I always tell every parent, every child's level of recovery is going to be different, because the definition of recovery is to regain health. And that's what this is really about. It's a biological illness that is environmentally triggered. It is not a mental illness. So this is why children can recover from it. But you've got to get the toxins out of the way and the inflammation out of the way. And once you do that, then you can, but you have to know the specific process for autism. It's very, very specific. It's done in a specific order. And that's what I walk people through. And when I figured it out and have this knowledge, I thought, how could I not share it with other people? And so that's what my whole quest is about now, is reaching other parents who are looking for these resources, want them, and want to get their kids better and believe that their kids can get better.
So, gosh, I am just flooded with questions here. The first question I have for you, Karen, let's say a parent doesn't know their child has autism yet. Let's say they're like you were, where I'm sure there was a period where you're just going, something is going on here, but I don't know what. What are some of the symptoms?
This was the case with my son. We started taking him to therapists when he was 5, and one therapist after another, multiple therapists over and over several years, told us basically it was us as parents, that basically we were bad parents. We needed to be firmer with discipline. We were letting him get away with too much. I mean, I don't know what they expected us to do, short of physical abuse. And sadly, that's what some people are doing with their kids. And that
will make it worse.
And divorce is very high among parents of children with autism.
Oh, I said it will make it worse.
Will make it worse. Yeah. And you can't just force these kids to do things. There are therapies, et cetera, that kids are being put into and asked to do things that, like my own son would say, Mom, I want to, but I can't. And I realized that he physically, literally couldn't carry out some of the tasks asked of him. And later, and now I know it was because his brain was so toxic and so inflamed at the time that he couldn't do it. And so fortunately, after a certain amount of time, a lot of pointless therapy sessions, a lot of money spent on things that weren't working, I finally pulled him out. I said, this isn't working. And his self-esteem was being hurt. And he didn't know why he couldn't figure out how to do things or focus. And he's highly intelligent. And a lot of these kids are brilliant. There's one interview I've done with another child also. He's 17 now, but he was diagnosed with autism at 18 months. In the 2nd grade, they diagnosed him with said he had an extremely low IQ, like way below, like a 2-year-old level kind of thing. Today, because he has had his biology recovered from, and especially with Lyme and mold, which are some of the co-infections that are very common and often missed, his mom was able to find out what to do for him. Today, he's graduating high school this year, and he's going off to medical college to be a doctor. And he has highest SAT scores, high grade scores, everything. It's not that our kids aren't intelligent, it's that they can't do things because their brain is toxic and inflamed. So we went through years of being told that our son, that it was our fault. And so we we couldn't, no matter what we did, he wouldn't listen to us. And he would just outright ignore us. They call it oppositional defiance disorder. He had severe anxiety and sensory issues, made it hard for him to sit in a classroom. He'd get in trouble at school a lot. You know, all of the typical, because they call it a spectrum disorder because everybody's symptoms are so different.
Okay,
And
so that makes it difficult to answer the question with the blanket
absolutely.
statements.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't even think that you really need a diagnosis unless you need that to help you somehow with getting insurance to pay for certain things that you're going to do that are hopefully healthy and good for them to do, or you need help in school and that gets you an aid or something like that. Otherwise, you know, I tell people, if your gut instinct tells you something's wrong, like this, he was my firstborn child, and I didn't know exactly what a child should do, but I knew that something was up. There was something up. So we started taking him to therapists, went through these phases over and over, and we're just at our wits' end at home with what to do with him. And it was very difficult to parent him. And so one therapist finally, when he was almost 10, diagnosed him and he said, you know what, I think he has Asperger's syndrome and autism. He goes, but I really don't know that much about it. You need to go research it for yourself. This is, you know, back in the early 2000s, and there weren't even many books out, that much information. And even the therapist kindly and honestly said, you'll have to research it for yourself. So with my background, fortunately, I couldn't at first find any books locally, and I went to a class for craniosacral work. It was up in Berkeley, which is a large university town.
Yes.
And they have a lot of bookstores. I went into
Can I say this?
Yeah.
I think that might have been your greatest gift, is to have him say, I don't know that much about it. You should go research it.
Right.
Because instead of just taking whatever they told you to do, which may or may not have been the best thing for your kid, you put it together and figured it out.
Yeah. I walked into a bookstore in Berkeley, and they had one, and the woman, I said, do you have any books on Asperger's and autism? And she said, yeah, our owner's son has it. And so we have a few. And the first one I picked up, I stood there in the store. I was like, I was reading about my son, you know, and of course there's like, well, he has this, and this. He doesn't have this and this, but he has this but I could tell, and it would say, you know, not everybody has the same things. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is what's going on. And so I came home and then found somebody who was a specialist in autism spectrum disorders, a therapist. And then she was the one who went through the testing of him and said, yes, this is what he has. But then once he was diagnosed, she just basically said, yeah, he has this. So, you know, I don't really have much.
Good luck.
Good luck. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? This is what parents are going through. Or like you said, like they say, well, you can try these medications. They sometimes help. And they have all these negative side effects and nobody else knows what to do. Or they tell you to go to like behavioral therapies where they kind of force them to teach them how to behave. Like, you know, they're not animals. This isn't a training, you know, we want them to be themselves. So anyway, fast forward, I kept researching. And then I basically figured it out. And today he is fully recovered.
But now, based on all of your research, you're able to help so many other parents. I mean, my gosh, you have people in over 40 countries using the system that you've developed. And that's not to say that parents aren't still trying to figure some things out on their own, but you've sort of laid out this path in this,
right?
That can help parents and get them going on something.
I had written my book, which of course diet is very important, but it is not everything. There's a lot more going on here.
Okay.
The proper amount of detoxification, because you've got heavy metals that get into the cells of the brain and the
Explain
things
that.
So we, heavy metals, mercury, lead, cadmium, aluminum, things like that. They're very neurotoxic, and we're exposed to them in our environment. They're in many vaccinations, various places where our kids are getting bombarded with them. And so these heavy metals can cause our children an inability to, along with their gut needs to be healed, but along with all of this, the sleep, the lack of ability to focus, the hyperactivity, the anxiousness, the sensory overload, all of these things come from what I call, and I'll say the 4 stages is, first of all, is healing the gut and all that that implies, including the candida and pathogenic bacteria in the gut, because the gut controls the brain and it controls 80% of the immune system. And then stage 2 is natural and safe heavy metal detoxification, because what you'll get at the doctor's office of pharmaceutical grade products or pharmaceutical products will pull out the good minerals like magnesium and calcium, as well as bad, and they allow for reabsorption of the toxins back into your system. And you don't want any of that to happen. So what I use, all natural, very safe, backed by over 300 studies. Then there's also the comorbid infections, mold, Lyme, and strep, also known as PANS or PANDAS, and then brain support and repair at the very end. So all of these pieces are very important. I have a free workshop where I walk through all of this and give all of the information the parents are needing, give you all of the pieces, walk you through that. And then in the end, I do talk about my membership program. That is, like I said, in over 40 countries where parents want my help. Then I walk them through step by step from beginning to end in the right sequence.
That's big.
With the right support supplements, because there's so many bad supplements out there on the market too. So I've weeded out the 95% that don't work and put in like the 5% that do. And at the right timing, I teach parents how to know what supplement is okay for their child when and what dosage, because that's really important too. And then of course the support, like we have a forum inside where they can ask their questions whenever they come up, because it's hard to get your questions answered when they come up, or you call your doctor and they want to have you come in again, and then it's another $100 or more just to ask a question, or you don't get them to respond, or you gotta wait 2 weeks to get in. It's ridiculous. So I think the support is just as important. So that's where I offer that to people as well.
Wow, this is a lot, because I'm listening and I'm absorbing all of the things that you're saying. There's a lot to consider, and the fact that you've helped your own son and he's not even diagnosable anymore, that speaks volumes. And now you're helping all these other people too. It's a big deal, Karen, and I'm really quite impressed. So when you, like for your son at this stage of the game, I'm guessing it becomes a lifestyle. It's not like you do this and you're done. It's an ongoing thing over a lifetime, because does he still have to really manage a lot of this stuff still?
Well, so the body does heal. And what we're trying to do is get the toxins, the inflammation, all the things that are in the way of their health. And because this is a health issue, our kids are sick. We want to get these things out of the way so that they can be healthy. And then the behavioral issues just change for the better and balance, because all of these things aren't creating chaos in their brain. And so when that happens, then the body does start to recover and be able to support itself. But our kids are sensitive, kind of call them the canaries of the world. They're very sensitive. They might have some issues with detoxification, although the program really strengthens that. But even I take things daily. I mean, I probably treat myself daily like some people do when they're sick, because I'm really strong about practicing prevention. We have a lot of environmental toxins out there today that we're exposed to daily, and we don't want to just wait until we have a problem to do something about it. So my son now, he eats things sometimes I don't want him to, but he's an adult, he's a young adult. And if he does things that, he overdoes it, I'll say, how you feeling? He's like, yeah, my stomach kind of hurt, or I got really tired, or I got a headache. I'm like, well, I'll show you, you know what to do for yourself.
He has the tools,
right?
Yeah, but, he has the tools.
Yeah, he has.
You've done your job as a mother.
You educate them as best you can, and
they do what they want.
Supplements he takes every day, but I do too. So yeah, you just stay on top of of taking care of yourself, but you don't end up being as incredibly sensitive your whole life. Some people do,
Mm-hmm.
they'll be more sensitive, but because everybody is different. Everybody is different, whether you have autism or not. But
Yeah.
it's something you can live a normal life, I guess is what I'm saying, and then just stay on
Yeah.
top of your maintenance and your preventative aspects.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know my youngest, it's obvious that she eats too much junk. It's we actually, by the time she was 3, and we had been doing a photo shoot with my best friend's husband as a photographer. It's great work, but we'd like spent a whole morning doing all these photos, and then we have this picture and we call it before food, after food picture, and just the difference. And it's not just food. She eats too much crap, and it's like it has a cumulative effect.
It does.
It's like all hell breaks loose.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can see that. I tell
yeah.
people it's so obvious to see it. That's great that you have that, that indication. And then as
Yeah.
she grows up, you can show her, look, when you eat these foods, do you notice that you just don't feel as good? And you kind of point it out to them. That's what I do with parents of children with autism too, because sometimes their kids are such picky eaters that we go through this process to switch their diet, right? Because they literally become addicted to foods. Gluten and casein, which are the proteins in dairy and wheat, create opiates in the system. So just like an opiate drug, they become addicted to those foods. And they're the highest, most inflammatory foods, other than glyphosate and other things, properties that they have in them that are problematic to our health, to anybody's health, but especially to kids who are super sensitive and have backed up detoxification systems. So yeah, you can show them how certain foods, how they don't feel as good when they don't eat them, and then notice, when they're eating well, it's kind of nice to feel good, isn't it? And just keep bringing that up to them so that they learn, because it's interesting with kids and being a parent. And you may have said, like, when they're younger, you think they're not really listening to you ever. And then as they get older and they go off on their own, I'm like, oh my gosh, they were listening.
Here's my question for you. Let's say a parent is going, maybe that's my kid. I know you've got all the resources, but let's say they never went to look at your resources, and I hope they do if they're thinking that. What's one thing you would say, do this step? What's the first thing you would say to just do this if you do nothing else?
Well, because it can take time to get into a therapist, especially a specialist, and you're spending the, waiting on that, taking the time, and all of those things. I think the first thing to do, if you start making those dietary changes right off the bat, and you start seeing the changes in your child, then that gives you a glimpse of what you can do to help them, because their body is, like I said, accumulating these problematic foods, feeding the bad bacteria in their gut, which the gut again controls the brain and the immune system. So you
what
can
is
see the
one
change.
food on that list?
Sorry?
What is one food on that list?
Well, the top two, and they're the most well-known, but there's a lot more. The top two are gluten and casein, which are the proteins in dairy and wheat. Yeah.
Okay. How do you know? In dairy and wheat. So basically, if you remove dairy and you remove wheat, you're on the right path.
Right.
Okay.
And then all processed carbohydrates. A lot of people will think, well, we went gluten-free, but then they start giving all of these processed carbohydrate, gluten-free junk foods to their kids. And all of those processed carbs, they turn to sugar in the body. So the sugar is feeding the candida overgrowth, which is a pathogenic bacteria in the gut, which is invading and creating more toxins in its own, boring holes in the lining of their gut bacteria, of their gut lining. It's boring holes through it, so they have something called leaky gut. This means they can have autoimmune illnesses, all of a sudden have allergies to everything that they never had before. They're not absorbing the right the nutrition from the foods that they're eating, even if you're getting good foods in them. You want to go fully organic if possible. I mean, the pesticides, the glyphosate, the things that are sprayed on our foods today, the hormones in meat, the grains that poultry and other meats are fed, things like that are invading our system. And so it's really
Okay.
important to be aware of that too.
Hmm. Now, can I ask you a few other types of questions here?
Mhm.
Since this is like homeschool think tank and I have homeschooling parents listening, do you find that, and I know you might not have like stats, but what is your observation as far as parents and educating their kids with autism? Do you see a lot of parents who have kids with autism homeschooling their kids? Or their kids struggling in school? You know, how, and I guess the spectrum is so wide. And I was a physical education teacher before I had kids. And I know I can think of two total extremes in autism where one child was barely even functional. And I don't know how his parents did it. My heart broke for them. And I was young. I was so young then. So young that I didn't fully understand the implications this had to be having on all of their life. But the poor boy, he was just out of control. And then another child who he functioned in a regular classroom just fine. And yeah, I knew there was something a little different there, but he was a really functional kid, you know? And so I remember seeing that, and, you know, like my student teaching and first years of teaching, that it's huge. There's a reason they call it the spectrum. But what do you see? And let's say kids on a good side, or I don't know, just what do you see? What are your observations?
Well, all of the things that I mentioned with, the diet, the toxins, the detoxification, the co-infections, mold, Lyme, all of these things affect the brain and its ability to focus and function properly. So any child, that's where also this anxiousness, this sensory overload, the lights,
Mm-hmm.
the external noises in a classroom, all of that can be overwhelming for a child with autism.
Yeah.
And I hear from parents constantly that their child has trouble focusing in a classroom. They might have an aide that tries to help them. They may be able to be helped in a classroom. They may be able to function in a classroom without an aide. They may not be able to function in a classroom because the sensory overload is too much. Everybody's different, but we don't want to isolate
Mm-hmm.
the kids. We want them to have
No.
interactions. So
Yeah.
if you are homeschooling, a lot of parents do homeschool. California and New York have passed laws where there's mandatory vaccinations, and some people who've seen changes in their child immediately go from normal functioning to autistic symptoms almost immediately after vaccination, know that they don't want to do vaccination anymore, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And so one alternative at the moment is they're homeschooling as well. And that's when I think it's a great alternative, especially if you can find other parents who will homeschool with you.
Yes.
And then you have a community within your own of people who are like-minded, supportive. The child is in with other kids that, so they're not isolated. Neither is the parent. And you're also able to, some parents have to work or they're a single parent. So maybe, they have to work on Tuesday and Thursday. And so Tuesday and Thursday can be the day that somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
homeschools the kids, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
do Monday and Wednesday so that you
Yeah.
alternate with other people, so that it gives you still some free time. You're not the
Yeah.
only one who has to do it, and you're able to work if you need to. But it also does, and you can let the child go at their pace with their needs.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the overstimulation. You also have the ability in homeschooling versus public school to teach as you want to, and things that you
Yeah.
want to teach in that environment where it's not just teaching to the system or teaching to test. You're able to support the individual, and I think that is really, really important.
I think testing is fairly difficult if you have autism because there's all the anxiety.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can see where that could be a
Yeah,
real
well, and
challenge with all the testing going on in schools.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm just thinking about all these different things. And I genuinely feel like everybody doesn't have to go through the challenges I've gone through. And let's help people. Let's help
right.
people.
That's
You know?
exactly why I wrote my book, giving the resources to parents who are looking for them, because support is huge. It's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of, I mean, in my membership program, I'm walking them through step by step in all of the health aspects. But beyond that, I think that, our live monthly call, the form to get your questions answered, and the support of the community
Yeah.
is huge, because everybody in there knows what it's like to be a parent of a child with autism, because it's not the same as being a parent of a child that doesn't have autism.
No.
People understand that there's no judgment. It's a
Mm-hmm.
private space where you can feel
Yeah.
comfortable and safe. And to
Mm-hmm.
know too that, for teaching any child, if they again are loaded with toxins and their brain is inflamed, they might really struggle and want to focus and want to learn. I have had, just like my own son, I said, I want to, but I can't. I've had other parents write in and say, my son was crying on the way home from school daycare and telling me, why can't I focus in the classroom? It was heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
I'm like, we're going to work on it. We're going to clear up those things that are in the way of his brain being able to function. Like this boy I mentioned earlier that was told that he had an incredibly low IQ in second grade, and now he's going off to medical school. What does
It's
it do
so
to their
sad. It's
self-esteem
so
if they
sad.
can't focus and learn and they want to? But
Yeah.
that's what we can work on. I can help them clear out all
Yeah.
of that stuff that's in their way. We also do a lot of uh, my background being in holistic health, craniosacral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
emotional clearing technique type of energy works, and other things that I do. We help the parents and the child with subconscious beliefs that have gotten instilled, like I'm not good
Yes.
enough, or people don't like me, or I'm not capable of things. All of those things, we want to clear all of those old beliefs out of the way once we start recovering the system and get the health back too, because
Yeah.
they have a healthy life to lead ahead of them, and we want them to feel confident and good about themselves.
Yes. Yes. And
Well, you start somewhere and it grows. I mean,
it does. Yeah.
I've my program's grown to being in over 40 countries,
That's
probably over
unreal.
50 at this point, because I haven't
Mm-hmm.
looked in a while, and people in small villages in Africa. I mean, you can be
It's
anywhere in the
crazy.
world, and that's the beauty of the online presence, is to be able to
Mm-hmm.
get resources wherever in the world that they live. If it's, they just might not have them around them, they might be somewhere that's rural, or various things. And I find a lot of people who have trouble, maybe as a parent of a child with autism, usually it comes back to their individual issues, their own self issues,
Mm-hmm.
about how they feel about themselves as a parent, or how they're in denial about their child having a problem. And then they're not working with the other parent to try and go through the process and be supportive. They're saying, oh, there's nothing wrong with them, or they're like, or we should just be firmer with discipline. There's, it doesn't, they're choosing to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that the child's doing it on purpose. And so it really does come back to the individual and them needing to do work on themselves. And that's where, some of that things I mentioned, the
Mm-hmm.
emotion code, the neuroemotional clearing stuff, those types of things are really helpful too. And just
Yeah.
having, key support pieces in place to work through that, because it's challenging. They say that the
So
stress hormones of a parent of a child with autism are the same as a soldier coming back from the Gulf War.
I know those are the same types of hormones for the parent of
The
a child
parent.
with autism. Oh my gosh.
Yep, the parent. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
7 of an intense life, and some of the kids are aggressive. I have people write in with just, the stories are just so intense, and some of them fearful. And I tell them, your child's not an angry child. They are toxic and inflamed, and we're going to clear some of these
Mm-hmm.
things out of the way. I have people who have been in the program, and after just like a few weeks, they'll say, oh my gosh, they're so calm now. They never used to be this calm. And it can be simple sometimes. It takes time. So I always tell people, be patient, because
Yes.
everybody's process is different. But if you follow this, they can get better, and then everybody's life is better, the entire family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, let's wrap this up.
All right. Well,
I
thank you
just
for
want to
having me.
say thank you so much for reaching out to us, for sharing your information and sharing this knowledge with our community. Like I said, I love it if you use my link, but if you don't, you need it, just go to Karen. So, because you know what? It's what people need. And at the end of the day, I just want people to get the help they need and help their kids. Just
Right.
help your kids, because
Your life can be better and your child's life can be better. And
yes,
offer the
yes.
support for what you need. So that is what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
Truly care about the parents, and I've lived it myself, so I know the challenges, and support is really necessary. So